Well, thank you very much. So it's the 1st of July 2020. My name is Anna Brees. I'm speaking to GP Ricochet. He was on the BBC. A lot of people know you, Rick, from Scrum
Yeah,
V. I was watching some of your videos today. You're very good, very, very good BBC
they're in
presenter.
widescreen. They always used to shoot me in widescreen.
And my dad's a big rugby fan. And you also said you're a GP at the moment in Aberdare, Penrhyn Khyber, which my dad's from. You've been to Tenby. You've been all over the south of Wales. And we're going to be talking about some of the stories that you're hearing.
Patients, I've got lots of, and it's interesting, I suppose, that I'm in a position where I'm covering quite a different demographic currently. So I have a reasonable spread of my experience of the COVID pandemic. And it certainly has been an interesting time.
You obviously have then seen, so for anyone watching in Wales, you tell me a little bit about the stories that you're hearing. I know we spoke on the phone the other day, and quite heartbreaking stories from people that have attended funerals and people in their 80s thinking, what should I do? You know, I've got no quality of life. I can't go to church. I can't go to shops. And they'd come to you, you know, we all go to the family doctor and say, what do we do right now? Because you're hearing messages, different messages about what's going to keep you safe and what's the best decision to make. So what's your reflection on what's happening in Wales right now? And tell us a little bit about some of the case studies, if you can.
Well, I think it's changed. I think everybody's attitude to this situation has changed. You can't speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself. When it was first mooted, the sort of back end of February, early March, where we in the medical profession, before it really started to hit the mainstream press, we were aware of the possibility of a new respiratory virus. And I think the feeling initially, I don't think I'd be out on a limit because you take your lead from the experts. The feeling was, well, we've seen these before. The original, the virus that we're concerned about now, the SARS-CoV-2, the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus Mark 2, is the next one off the production line from the SARS virus. I think it was from 2002. That was quite a nasty one, but it was well contained. Don't know why, And then we had the swine flu and the bird flu of the sort of 2010, 11 time. So this one did happen, and that's the point that I want, that I made with you. I'm not a coronavirus denier. This is a very real pathogen which needed to be contended with. And what was happening, you mentioned the chap from Imperial College and Ferguson from Imperial College, but also there were different groups advising SAGE at the time in Oxford. I think it was Sunitra Gupta was another one of those. And they had different opinions of what might be happening, and they modelled for it. And they advised government, and the government announced that they were going to lock down for the 3 weeks. And at the time I thought, God, just as a man in the world rather than a medic, I thought that's quite a thing. Never in peacetime, never before during any other outbreak in modern times of any other virus have we made such impositions on people's civil liberty. And it was quite remarkable and commendable to the British public how well they went along with it. And I think they did so because this is the way I felt that it was being sold, is that right, this big thing's coming, we're not sure what's going to happen, but we're concerned we might not have the capacity within our healthcare service to care for all those who may become extremely unwell. We'd all seen the photographs, the footage coming from different parts of the globe, especially Wuhan, and then more worryingly for us, because it was getting closer to home, in Italy. That was my first experience of dealing with coronavirus. One Tuesday afternoon, working in Aberdare, getting a phone call from a mother whose little boy had been sent home from school, secondary school, because he had a fever and a cough, and he'd been on a school trip to Italy the week before. And that was the guidance we were giving for COVID. That was how that was the guidance. It's when you look back at it that you can apply adjectives to it and you can bring in emotions to it. So you could say, if nothing had happened, well, that's how arrogant we were about it, because the guidance that we were issued to manage it was, well, have you been to Wuhan? Have you been or know anyone who's been to Wuhan? That was the initial guidance. Then it was, well, have you been to Northern Italy or any of the other places that, and almost, but then by a daily, the pebble in the pond, it rippled out, and daily the advice would change. And I, very quickly, I think I explained to you previously, I lost faith in the way it was being reported in the mainstream media, because, as I said, for the first time in my life, the subject of the news, instead of being like, for the first 40 years or 50 years of my life when it was stuff I just didn't understand, politics, economics, wars in far off lands, didn't understand it, people talking about it, experts talking, I had no understanding of it. I just listened and go, oh, okay, I had an opinion, of course, but you'd listen. I have a bit of an understanding of medicine. I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not a virologist, but I had an understanding of medicine and what one should do. And I just felt that the line of questioning and the way things were changing very quickly. Nothing in clinical practice changes quickly, because evidence does not evolve on a minute by minute basis. Evidence is built up over years, often of clinical practice and controlled, randomized clinical trials where we can literally, control is the word. Well, there was no control, was there, in early March? So things got pretty scary pretty quickly. Here in Tenby, in the early days of it, we had a death, that was attributed, and we were thinking, crikey, well, if it's got to Tenby in those early days, you're thinking, this is significant, and it is significant. I'm not saying that it's not. And at that point, people then stopped coming to general practice for the usual stuff that they would come to general practice for. Whatever it was, their sore throat, their, the bad back, the knee, the stuff of general practice, the stuff of family medicine, children with earaches and sore throats, and following up blood. They would stop coming. And then I volunteered to work in the field hospitals, because I just thought, this is the opportunity. You train to do something. It's an opportunity to do something. And it just happily, although people have, happily, not happily that people lost their lives, happily the service was able to absorb the demand. And unfortunately, people did lose their lives. But the field hospitals, specifically for us in the Millennium Stadium, and the Hensel Field Hospital, which is the one that I was going to be deployed to, they weren't needed. We were stood down. And for my mind, then that was the time I think they needed to stand back and say, okay, let's reassess and reappraise. Maybe not then after 3 weeks, but maybe I think after 3 months, now is a time for reappraisal. And the stories that you alluded to, they are many, but they are no more valid than the evidence that I critique. That it's anecdotal evidence of my experience of talking to daughters of mums who have just lost their husband after 43 years of marriage and cannot be consoled by their loved ones for fear of contracting the virus. And I think it's when you start examining little individual atomized cases like that you just have to question the wisdom of a blanket policy, because we know that never in life does one size fit all. You're
talking specifically about one patient of yours whose husband died. Is that right?
And It was the daughter of the gentleman who died, who rang me, who was deeply concerned about her mum, who was understandably beside herself, grieving. But her grief could not be assuaged as it would have been before March the 21st by her daughters and sons and grandchildren coming round and giving her a hug and a kiss, and then going to a funeral and having a proper send-off. There was a distance funeral. I'm not sure. I can't comment on that. I'm not sure. But there is now a recently bereaved widow in a house that she'd shared with her husband for 43 years. With nothing. No one.
With no comfort.
Probably couldn't even, only I just about managed to work out how to link this up to have a chat with you tonight. This kind of technology might have offered us some succor, but it wasn't available for her. And the daughter was saying, well, what can you do? What can you do? And I said, well, I think it's more, what can what can you do? What can she do? I think, any prescription that I might give her, which I don't think would have particularly helped, because she's grieving. You don't medicalize people's grief. I certainly wouldn't. And she just needed what we all need. We're human. We need our family at times like that, don't we? And that's what
we don't want to go against what we've been told by the government.
No, and I think that's what's remarkable, isn't it?
Media, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's what. I mean, that's a great testimony to the character of the people of this country, that they will do what they think is the best in the public interest. And I think that's what's brought us to this almost impossible point now, where we are particularly concerned about the opening of schools, where everything, I'm afraid, gets reduced down to its most basic level by the sort of the febrile public discourse at the moment. And we've polarized people now. We've gone from the Brexit remaining camp to, lockdown or lockdown skeptic. And you're either one or the other, and you can't be in the middle saying, well, can we just have a chat about this? No, if you reduce this argument down to, if you want to ease lockdown, then you are tantamount to committing manslaughter by forcing people to go out and get the virus. And, if I don't want my child to go to your child to give my teacher partner a virus that I then give to my 85-year-old grandfather and he dies, and then that's on you. And I think, well, I just don't think you can contend with that kind of logic, because it's bonkers. It just doesn't, there's no rationale.
But you said to me on the phone, we've got to balance the risk, because you made it clear when schools reopen in Scotland, England, Wales, well, they have, but they haven't in Wales, have they? But you said that children, you said there's more risk for children being at home. And we've heard on this channel from numerous, a child's counsellor who put forward 3 case studies, but so many more. They're very concerned about vulnerable children. And you might be okay, and you might be on furlough, or you might have an income, but there are people that have lost their jobs. There are people that are in situations of domestic abuse. Single parents potentially with lots of children are really struggling at the moment, and they want things to get back to normal. And the new normal is a term that's been used a lot, and about when the schools reopen, will children be put in these social distancing situations, are part-time learning, they call it blended learning, but it's learning in the school but also online. There's real concerns about children. But you said, you're not denying that coronavirus is a killer, but you're very concerned about children and the risk to children. I know you said that the other day.
Well, I know from the data, and this is what science is about. So the data that we have, or certainly the data that's been available to me, articles in the British Medical Journal, even just a very top line analysis of the Office of National Statistics of the cumulative deaths by age group, will tell you that this disease does not in any great measure kill children of school age. They rarely contract it. If they do, it is probably, I can't know, but because they have an immunocompromised underlying condition. But I think if you look at the Office of National Statistics, in fact, I know because I checked it before it came out, the deaths under the age of 14, there's something like four. So of school-age children, that gives you a 1 in 3.5 million chance of your child going to school. And I don't think it's not the parents. There will be some, of course. It's not from the parent side of the net that the problem is. It's because the teachers want to go back to a safe working environment. I obviously understand that, because at the height of this epidemic, or pandemic rather, we were working And as I said, the field hospitals were going to be the front line. That's where I was going to put myself. You'll remember there was a massive outcry about the lack of PPE. And it was all over. I came off Twitter at that point, because I could not go on Twitter without hearing people banging on about PPE and how it was a threat. Now, if I was going to go and work in the hospital, which I was, I would have taken whatever I was given to go and work, because if I didn't, then who was going to do it? Now, I'm not trying to, that's the job that we do as doctors. We take an oath to protect. And if we don't go and do it, then who's going to go and do it? So if there wasn't full body hazmat suits, if that's what they thought was appropriate, then that's what I would have worn. But if people needed treating, they would have needed treating. I would have taken what was available to me and gone in to help them. And I don't think you can ever guarantee anybody's safety. And I think if we know on that basis that the children are safe and that there is evidence that they are not spreaders of the disease, there is evidence of that. And we've seen that from schools that have reopened in Denmark and I believe elsewhere in Scandinavia, that there haven't been big cases. Then you're then looking at the teachers. Now, I understand their reluctance, that they don't want to go and catch the disease. I completely get that. But I think they should be given the choice. I think this is where it's a matter of personal choice. And I think that's the big government needs to back off now and say, look, if personally you feel you cannot go to work because the risks are too great, then that's fine. You don't have to. We will have to make up some sort of contingency plan to cover that and get some supply teachers or whatever. I think the big point that I did make to you that might possibly be the only decent point I've ever made in my life, because I was thinking of my own children. I've got twin boys. They're 8 years of age, and obviously I see them through a father's eyes. I think they're great. Prior to lockdown, they were going to school. They were playing football for Ely Rangers. They had a rhythm to their life. There was great fun, and they were learning, and they were doing really well at school, and that's fine. And whether you do well at school or not, that doesn't matter. They had friends. They played football. They were loving life. I've watched them regress. I've seen that in 12 weeks that they've regressed. Their just energy levels have gone. I'm not going to, and again, it's anecdotal. It means nothing. It's a one-off observation made by me about my own kids, which is inevitably biased. So it has no scientific merit at all. But on its own, I've seen them regress from being kids that would be up and at it to really can't be bothered to do anything at all of any great significance. And I'm thankful that there's two of them the same age that still bounce off one another and largely get along. But my boys have got one chance to be 8. They get one chance in their life to be 8 years of age and have a summer as an 8-year-old. When you reach working age, every year's the bloody same. You know that, don't you? I'm 52. My working year this year will be the same as my last one, as this one. You look forward to your holidays. You look forward to. It is in these years that you have from 0 to 16 that you define your life and the person that you're going to be, and you socialize yourself and you learn your social skills and you learn how far you can push your luck. You learn how far you can do things, and you develop and you nurture yourself and you grow and you learn how to behave. And I think that this is the big thing. My children and every other parent's children, whether they're 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, they get one shot at these years, one shot at it. And I would implore my colleagues in teaching, because my first degree, which was at South Glamorgan Institute, which is now Cardiff Met, I got my degree in hopping and skipping, which was the foundation course to go on and then be a PE teacher. And I've got so many friends that I met at South Glamorgan Institute who are teachers. One of whom is the chief executive of the Welsh Rugby Union, who gave up the Millennium Stadium. Martin Phillips gave up the stadium. One of my colleagues gave up the stadium for a hospital. So I know that my friends want to nurture children. They love doing it. They've made great careers for doing it. So I'm not even trying to set myself up against teachers. I would just urge the people making the decisions to please look at the evidence. And if you've got some evidence that we're not aware of that suggests that there is great risk uniquely to teachers in teaching situations, then we're open to it. But I cannot see, I don't see why this can't be the case. And I'm desperately worried that they're not even going to get to go back to any kind of normality in September.
Well, why are we so different as well? Scotland, England and Wales. And Mark Drakeford we seem to be a little bit behind, and there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot being said about Leicester at the moment, but we are in lockdown. But in Wales, we are still in lockdown, and children will be 5.5 months, and they'll have had, we thought the schools were going to reopen, but they've actually realistically had, in where I live, there'll be 9 hours of schooling over 5.5 months.
Yeah.
So why
it's the conversations.
you can't have this conversation, Rick, without one talking about the government or the media. And you talk about the lives of your children or my children. They'll be thinking, what's going on here? My parents seem confused. My teachers seem confused about the advice that they're getting from the government and what's being reflected by the media. So with your background and with my background, having worked for BBC and ITV, do we think that we need to get a different message out there to the public of this debate? Like you say, it's not about lockdown or herd immunity, but being able to have actually debates.
Well, herd immunity is vital, and it's one of those phrases that I think if you took a clipboard out into the street and asked people what they thought about herd immunity, I would imagine they'd have a pejorative view about it, which is a result of misinformation. Because herd immunity it's not a strategy, it's not a tactic that Boris and the evil Cummings cooked up in a cabinet briefing. Herd immunity is how this species, Homo sapiens, have navigated their way through 5 million years of evolution on this rather inhospitable rock that we live on, that's been trying to kill us in miserable ways for, seriously. If you think, read Bill Bryson's, when your opening line of it is, if you're reading this, congratulations, because your ancestors have come through, you've got no idea what it's taken to get you to this point to be able to read a book. And, again, not wishing to diminish this pathogen, but it is just that. It is just the latest in a long line of pathogens that we would have to contend with. And we are contending with it. And I would say we're doing a reasonable job of contending with it, because like all of the ones that have come before, with the exception actually of influenza, which tends to influenza can pick off children, can be carried and spread by children. Very different operation, between influenza family of virus and the coronaviruses, which are responsible for about 10 to 15% of all of the sort of upper respiratory tract infections that we get. That is about my limit of my knowledge of virology, but I know what they are. I know the types of things that they are. They are there. They are amongst us. And the only way you achieve herd immunity is that it passes through the herd, which is, I think that's because it's such a sort of herd. We're not cattle, Boris. I think because it's the herd immunity in the medical community is spoken of, and nobody gets humpy about it. Because Boris talks about herd immunity, it becomes a political football. And like I said, I'm not Boris's fanboy by any stretch of the imagination. You either achieve herd immunity by it passing through the community. Unfortunately, these things will pick off the elderly and those who are ill-equipped to deal with infections, and those that remain will have immunity, and those that don't get affected by it will have the immune people to buffer them from it, and that's how it works. Or you have a vaccination program. That's the other way you can achieve herd immunity. Well, we don't have a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2. We have a vaccine for influenza, and yet still it kills anywhere between, I think as recently as 2018, that winter it killed as many as 28 or 26,000 people with a vaccine. So I don't know why this conversation's not being had. As I said, I've stopped watching the mainstream media, possibly because I wasn't hearing any counter-narrative. The only counter-narrative you hear was a counter-narrative from the press to policy that government was taking.
I agree with you, which is why I've had professors coming to the channel and talking to me and saying, especially ones that are watching the media in Germany, they're very confused by what they're hearing from our media here, for example, from the BBC, without that more balanced view. But that's what I would say. Do you think this is going to change people's views? And I only ask you this because you have worked for the BBC and I have as well. Do you think this is going to maybe cause trust issues with the media and with the government if they don't feel they are adequately reflecting people's real situations? And we need guidance, don't we? We need guidance in a crisis situation. we need to have information that we can trust, so we know what to do for the best for our families and for our children. And I've been disappointed too by what I've been hearing from previously trusted media brands, that I thought there would be more balance to the message.
Well, I would find it very hard to critique the BBC, because I owe it so much of my life personally, in my soul, and what it did for me, and the fun and the joy that I had working for the BBC. It wouldn't be comfortable for me to do that. But yeah, I believe that we are in a polarizing environment, and whatever is the topic of the day, you're either with us or against us. And it seems to me that the BBC, along with other branches of what is bundled in as the mainstream media, seem to take a position, and everyone's either with them or against them, and you very rarely hear an opposing view. I will add the caveat that, like I said, I stopped listening to it because I didn't trust it. But I would also say that, I'm sitting here in my pompous way saying, it's science, and you have to read the science and publish papers. Even within the realm of medicine, we have seen acts of misrepresentation of data in august journals like The Lancet, where the trials, or sort of retrospective trials and ongoing trials, looking at the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine as a treatment with some of the, I think it's azithromycin, one of the macrolide antibiotics, as a form of treatment at a certain critical stage of the disease. Now, the review was published in The Lancet, and it focused on the safety. Now, everybody knows that, because hydroxychloroquine has been around for a long time, and it's sort of closely allied molecule, chloroquine, for the treatment of malaria. Now, I don't get involved with that much as a GP, because that's now, if you're going to go to Kenya on your holidays, then you go and sort yourself out with that with a private prescription. But I do know that hydroxychloroquine is still used in rheumatology, for example. I have some patients for whom I prescribe hydroxychloroquine, so I know it's an effective drug. I know it works in the right patients for the right indication. But we are aware of the fact that it does have potential for cardiac side effects. So the paper that was published in The Lancet made a big play about the evidence that, as they saw it, made it a non-starter. They said, look, we're going to suspend the trials. We have to withdraw use of hydroxychloroquine because the risk of cardiac side effects is too great. And then this was challenged, and then the author of the trial was challenged, and The Lancet then had to, so it was pulled, and then it was then The Lancet had to write an apology saying, we should not have pulled this, and it just makes you go, oh my God. So if I've got no faith in the BBC,
yeah,
and Sky and the Times and the Telegraph, and I'm scratching around on YouTube and reading, to try and find something that's a counter narrative, and I get the BMJ every week. I'm a member of the British Medical Association. I get the BMJ every week. I practice with the British Medical Journal website best practice. So if there's stuff, it's a wonderful time to be a GP, because you learn your stuff to pass your exams, and great, then you get your certificate eventually. And nowadays you've got these resources that you have. You don't have to pick up a dusty old textbook. It's there and it's up to date. So I've got the British Medical Journal best practice website. I have it open. So if I see something I'm not sure about, I can go into it and I can see, right, what test should I be looking to do? If I think this is what the diagnosis is, what should I do to? And it's fantastic. And so I trust it enormously, but it's obviously, nothing's perfect.
Well, listen,
that kind of brings us to the point,
apologised, and I work with corporate communications clients on media training, and I think it's so important that you do apologise. So I think trust can be regained if you're exposed, mistakes that you may have made in the past. And like you say, it's so important at the moment that we maintain that level of trust in those sources that you go to in a time of crisis. So I completely appreciate where you're coming from. Just to end the interview, because I've been talking to you for a while, I'm so grateful to you for being so candid, so honest, and in a time when people are struggling and suffering, what is the future with this situation? And for trust in the medical profession, for the government, for the media, for how we go forward. And also if we have another situation where it comes back, coronavirus comes back in the winter time and we have to go through lockdown again, you know, what can we do? Where can we go? What do you predict for the future?
Well, I mean, there's quite a lot to unpack there. In my time, what's the new normal? So, you know, I've been lucky to, you know, a lot of people said, depending on what you read and how you feel, that, you know, there's never been a better time to be alive. And I personally agree that. I believe that right now it's a great time to be alive. That, you know, we by and large, we're pretty kind to one another in this country. We've got some good healthcare. We've got good schooling. It's a good place. Occasionally things come along and they shake us to our foundations, and then there becomes a new normal. So if you remember 2000, you know, the 9/11 bombings, and we've never gone on holiday again without taking our shoes off and going through, and that's fine. And we kind of go, okay, fine. Now we do know, I suspect, that there was only one chap, the Richard Brown, was the shoe bomber, that had a go at that. And that's the one guy that now means that 500 million people every year have to take their shoes off and go through. And we'll put up with that. You know, that's a minor inconvenience, going from check-in to the bar or to the duty-free in my wife's case, you know, to wherever it is you get. It's a minor inconvenience. If your children can't go to school, it's no longer a minor inconvenience. It is a seismic change in our society. It's not like a new normal. It's let's go back and rewrite everything. Because if children can't go to school, then a lot of people aren't going to be able to go to work. And the 3 months that we've had, where the government has, you know, in between a rock and a hard place. I'm not, you know, whether it had been red, yellow, blue in office, they would have been handled an incredible damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
I agree, yeah.
So we have to get this in my estimation, we've got to go back to freedom of choice, but informed choice. The choice is informed, and it's informed with the best data and knowledge that we have. So, for example, you know, if we're looking at schools, we can try and convince the teachers' unions or whoever it is that's opposing, go and say, look, please, the data that we have is that children are not at risk here. So when you're sending people not back to school, for who's benefiting from this? For whose benefit is it? Is it for children and society at a large? Because we don't have schools to give X amount of people a job as teachers, do we? They are there to educate and socialize the next generation of children. They're not just something for teachers to do and keep the kids together. And, you know, that education is one of the most important foundations. So I think unless we get this fixed, then I don't know where we go, you know, because 3 months of people being furloughed will be as of nothing if families really can. I mean, I'm lucky I can work and my wife can stay at home and look after our kids, but I don't know what's going to become of my children. They'll probably be okay because they've, you know, they're middle-class family, you know, and they'll probably be okay as long as dad's working, and they'll probably be okay. But as a GP, I've got a broader interest. I'm concerned more across the board. I mean, patients, you know, they don't go on about it. I've had patients today. Mental health was always a big thing, always getting a big thing, always becoming a much more significant proportion of your clinical time as a GP. Certainly in my experience, it was, you know, you'd be amazed how much, probably the biggest proportion of single, you know, speciality stuff that you manage. And that was before this. And that was before people who have lost loved ones to this. So we're going to have people who have lost loved ones to this injustice of a pandemic, people who would have lost their work. In a town like Tenby, where I'm sitting now, looking, you know, I'm right at the top of North Beach, looking out, the sun's out, looking at the lifeboat slip, beautiful. How does Tenby rebuild itself when all the businesses, you know, they live for the 12 weeks between like now and the end of September? Where does, and it just, I don't know what will be the new normal. Yeah, take wearing a face mask in public. No, because how can you do that? We don't let people, not so long ago, we weren't letting people go into post offices with motorbike helmets on. Now we're telling everyone they have to go in with full face coverings.
Yeah.
So whatever rationale that was, and I suspect there are more post offices robbed than there are post office customers dying of postmasters dying of coronavirus. So what's your greater risk there? I don't know. I'm being a little bit facetious there. But everything in life is risk versus reward. Risk versus, what is the risk benefit? What is the risk? Weigh up that risk. And then you as an individual take responsibility for your actions and decide what you want to do. And if it's just too much to countenance, re-engaging with the world after this virus, well, then that's a matter for you, and you will have the support of society, to help you through it. But I think for the rest of us that can look at the evidence and think, look, I've got a 99% chance of seeing my next birthday. I like those odds. I'm going to go back to work. And I think that just seems to be the only way we can do it. I mean, otherwise, what are we going to do? Hide from this virus forever? It's just... Well,
who knows how long it's going to go on for, if it comes back, if these restrictions come in the winter. What I hope
normal, probably will come back.
Well, if we don't go for herd immunity and freedom and choice, which is what you suggest might be a good approach.
Well, I'm certainly not likely to get elected to public office anytime soon, but it seems that those are our choices. That we get choices in life, don't we? Choices all the way. So what do I want to do? Am I happy to live in my bubble, to my home and my family, who I can't go out into we used to love going to St. David's Centre, go to TGI Fridays, go to Wagamama's, on a Friday afternoon when I get home from work.
Yeah, I love Toby Carvery.
Yeah, go to the cinema, then Saturday morning, go to the football, go and watch Wales play, take the boys down to the boys. One of the last things before lockdown, I took them to watch the Blues play, poor things. And, and they loved it, and it was fab. And there's just so many, I watched Leeds United playing Cardiff City on the telly a mile from my house. I couldn't go and watch it, empty stadium, but 22 blokes are allowed to run around and play football there, but my kids can't play on the pitch opposite. Kids who don't get the virus can't play on the AstroTurf pitches opposite. And it's like, I don't, and I'm starting to get a bit ranty now. It just gets a bit, I just don't know. And I'm not sure where we're going. And this week, to hear that Mr. Drakeford relaxed conditions so you can have some people from your family into your house, but you got to pick which family members you're having. It's like, well, how's that going to work? Luckily I'm an only child. Neither of my parents would want me in anyway, but
and you've seen your patients being so obedient to the legislation. What I do hope, Rick, is the new normal is people like you talking and speaking out and sharing your concerns and your compassion for others and seeing the whole picture. So I really appreciate you talking to me. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we end the interview?
Well, obviously stay safe, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I hope I don't appear to be like too much of a ranty fool. I mean, anyone who's ever known me knows I like to chat, and I think that's what we thrive on. You have opinion, and that's what barroom, that's what rugby commentary was all about, was your opinion. Who should be in there? I used to host the post-match radio, the post-match phone-ins, and it was all about, Gatlin should be dropped, and we need to pick James Hook at 10 and get rid, and that's what drives the world around. So I do love a good old chat, but I believe in honesty first and foremost. Honesty is what I believe, and I think we're living in times that are so highly politically charged at that level of that truth. Absolute truth is often just like, no, that's not convenient. The truth isn't convenient. We've got our ideas that we want to peddle. And I worry that when you're dealing with massive public health issues, and this is beyond public health now, this is what we're talking about today, is the future of a generation of children, and I think it's something that needs careful consideration.
Thank you again for talking to me, and you're welcome on the channel anytime, Rick. Take care. Enjoy your evening in Tenby.
Bless you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.